Hello and welcome to Pamphlet Global. Now I'm going to talk about three major newspapers who had already given their verdict before you guys even read a word on Bengal elections. And three we are talking about is going to be about how the international media has gone ahead and covered this. Now Bengal voted on Friday. By Monday the BJP had pulled off its biggest breakthrough in the state's history with 207 seats out of 294. A 15-year regime had collapsed, but while votes were being still counted in Kolkata, another process was already complete in the newsrooms across New York, Doha, and Washington. The verdict about Bengal had already been written. The New York Times called it a conquest. Al Jazeera framed it as a religious polarization. The Diplomat described it as an authoritarian consolidation. The Washington Post saw something very different. One election, four headlines, and one important question. Who wrote these stories and what they had already decided before they began writing? If you read the foreign coverage of Bengal carefully, the entire global media response falls into three clear camps. Three sets of assumptions, three very different ways of looking at the same election. The election was the news peg. The conclusion already existed. Let's start with Camp 1, the strategic frame, the camp that actually did journalism. The camp that actually did journalism. On May 7th, the Washington Post published an opinion piece by Bill Drexel of the Hudson Institute. The headline was simple: Modi's electoral triumph cements his legacy. The stand first was even simpler. Another BJP victory showed how resilient the Hindu nationalist movement had become. Notice the language: resilient, not dangerous, not authoritative, not authoritarian, just resilient. Drexel is not a BJP supporter. He is a scholar who writes on Indo-Pacific competition, China, and global power politics. He has written for Foreign Affairs, Foreign Policy, Politico, and the Wall Street Journal. He openly criticized Donald Trump's tariffs on India. In other words, he's not a cheerleader, he's an analyst. His conclusion on Bengal was straightforward. The BJP's 2024 setback was not a decline, it was a pause. The party's organization, welfare machinery, and security narrative remained intact, and Bengal proved it. No moral sermon, no loaded vocabulary, just pure analysis. Bloomberg, CNBC, Reuters, and Nikkei Asia largely stayed in the same lane. They focused on the markets, trade, investment flows, the Bangladesh border, the rupee, and the road to 2029. Nikkei's Delhi correspondent Kiran Sharma filed a very clean, fact-driven report without ideological packaging, and that is what foreign correspondents are supposed to do, and they are supposed to look like. Analysts, they have to quote analysts were quoted, numbers were cited, readers allowed to decide for themselves. That's what their stories were all about. Then comes the Camp 2, the ideological frame of these camps. The camp did not simply report the election. It interpreted the election through a fixed worldview that already exists long before Bengal voted. Let's start with the New York Times headline: Modi's Hindu nationalists conquer a bastion of India's opposition. Conquer is the word here where we need to focus. The word matters. Democratically winning an election becomes framed like a military occupation. The report was written by Mujib Mashal. Mujib Mashal is the Times South Asia bureau chief, and Mujib had previously worked with Al Jazeera English before joining the Times. His reporting has a consistent thesis on India's secular identity is being transferred by the Hindu nationalism. In a 2025 piece on the RSS Senatory, Mashal wrote that Hindu rights vision of a muscular Hindu first India had now become mainstream, and that India's secular identity had been transformed. This is not simply reporting an event. This is beginning with a conclusion and a fitting for that is beginning with a conclusion and fitting future events to it. For Mashal, Bengal was not new evidence. It was confirmation of the thesis already established years ago. Then there is Al Jazeera. Its headline described Bengal as an evidence of hegemonic power. The report was written by Yashraj Sharma, a journalist whose work focuses heavily on minority rights and social conflicts. And that perspective of his shapes the reporting itself. The stand first framed the BJP victory as a product of religious polarization. The story opened with a Hindu housemaid explaining why she believed Mamata Banerjee favored Muslims. Large sections focused on voter roll revisions and claims surrounding deleted voters, but without deeply engaging with the legal or institutional context behind those revisions. Again, the conclusion appeared before the evidence did. The reporting simply reinforced it. Then comes The Diplomat. Its piece was written by Kolkata-based journalist Signindu Bhattacharya, author of Mission Bengal, a Saffron Experiment. His article described BJP as the Hindu supremacist party and referred to saffron hegemony of Modi's authoritarian regime. These are not neutral analytical terms. Please notice that they are ideological labels and they are appeared in a publication read widely by diplomats, policy professionals and international observers trying to understand India. These writers, the three publications and three writers, one vocabulary, one framework, one conclusion, reached before the election itself had even finished. Then there is Camp 3, the wire services, the Reuters, the AFP, the AP. Their report were simpler: elections, numbers, geopolitics, trade implications, coalition math, markets, and strategy. No conquest language, no sweeping ideological declarations, just facts moving across the wire to newspapers around the world. These are the least glamorous journalists in the business, but often the ones doing the cleanest of the work. And that brings us to the real point. Most foreign coverage of Bengal was not independent reporting arriving at different conclusions. It was the application of pre-existing templates. For Bill, Drexel and the strategic press, Bengal was evidence of political resilience and long-term electoral consolidation. For Reuters and the wires, it was a geopolitical and economic development. For Mashal, Sharma and Bhattacharya, it was further evidence of an India being transferred by Hindu nationalism. The template changes very little, only the event changes. The same framework appeared after abrogation of Article 370, after the Citizenship Amendment Act, after 2019 elections, after Yogi Adityanath's rise in Uttar Pradesh. The vocabulary stays remarkably same. It's consistent: conquest, saffron, hegemonic, supremacist, authoritarian. The conclusion is often visible before the reporting begins, and that is the deeper issue here. There is no longer just about one Bengal election. It is about how sections of global media establishment now approach India itself, not as a country to be observed, but as a thesis to be continuously validated. This is why the distinction matters. Drexel and the wire reporters told audience what happened and explained the implications. Then they stopped. Others began with a very different what they believed India already was, and Bengal simply became the latest supporting chapter. So the next time you read a New York Times piece on India, an Al Jazeera explainer, or a diplomat analysis, do something simple. Look up the writer, read their previous work, watch for recurring language, watch for recurring assumptions, because vocabulary is never accidental. Words like conquer, hegemonic, saffron, supremacist, these are not neutral descriptions. They are signals. They reveal the framework before the evidence even arrives. And perhaps the most interesting question is this: why do even institutions deeply critical of Modi sometimes publish analysts like Bill Drexel, whose conclusions sharply differ from their own newsroom framing? Because even inside hostile institutions, honest analysis still exists. You have to know where to find it. And that is where the story ends. Bengal voted, BJP won. That is the fact. Everything after that is interpretation. And every interpretation has his own author. Thank you.